Hello, everyone. Art Burns here, wishing you well today. So, as we practice paying attention to our experiences as they are happening and doing so without judgment, but just simply holding in awareness our moment to moment experiences without judgment, when we do this, we develop a skill, right? And this skill is to be able to meet every moment with non judging awareness, right? And so, one of the great sort of subsets of this skill is the ability to feel empathy. Okay, empathy is essentially just the outwardly directed non-judging awareness, right? It's essentially the non-judging awareness of another person's feelings, another person's pain, another person's whatever their experience is, right? And as we experience this, as we allow ourselves to, in a non-judging way, understand what another person is going through, that opens us up to something that's even more important, which is compassion. Right now, empathy is hugely important because empathy is the ability to feel what someone else is feeling, right? And as we do that, as we interact with people on a daily basis, the more we can feel them, the more they're going to feel felt. And then as they feel felt, they're going to really like it. And again, this is where we open up to compassion, right? Where we can understand that we are really, feeling someone else's pain, someone else's suffering, someone else's, whatever, joys, pleasures, everything. When we're able to feel that on a truly, visceral level within ourselves, that is where we can then, without judgment, we can, wish for that person to be well, right? Now, there are ways to practice compassion on its own, right? And these are very, very valuable as well. But it's also important to let it arise from this non judging awareness of someone else's experiences, right? Now, why is compassion so important? Why is, I just told you why empathy is important, but why is compassion important? Now, I've covered this a lot here, but because it's so important, I'm willing to cover it again, okay? Compassion does so many things for us, right? Especially as it relates to stress reduction, right? As we feel compassion for another, right, we are taking ourselves outside of our own sort of experience and our own, like, emotions and our own, sort of, fears and apprehensions, right? Compassion has no fear, right? Compassion is simply the wishing for someone else to be free from their suffering, to be free from their fear, right? And why does this work so well? Well, I'm going to tell you, okay? There's plenty of evidence that shows that we are brought into this world with an innate sense of goodness. Okay, it's irrefutable from the evidence that's out there, right? Scientific evidence, not just spiritual, woo woo stuff. I'm talking about hard nosed neuroscience, right? It is very, very clear that we are brought into this world with an innate sense of goodness. Additionally to that, there is also very, very much evidence with MRI machines and all kinds of different ways that they've studied people's bodies and brains that show that when we are practicing compassion, we are actually practicing happiness, right? Compassion makes us happy, and therefore, again, as it brings back to the stress responses, which is something that we're all, that's the name of the game when it comes to talking to me, right? Because 77% of American adults live with chronic stress, meaning they get into the stress response every single day. Okay, and this is not good for our bodies, right? This is something that is really, really dangerous for our bodies. It's good for our bodies if we're escaping a cheetah, or a lion, or a bear, or even even something in modern and urban parlance. If we're escaping a car accident, our stress response can be very helpful, but only in short bursts, right? That's the point. Like if a gazelle is running from a cheetah, the threat is over in about 3 or 4 minutes, or the gazelle is over in about 3 or 4 minutes. It's never meant to go on past that. But unfortunately, when we get kind of caught up in our own, fears and our own worries and our own sort of dramas that we're living with every day, that's when we trigger the stress response over and over and over again. And that's what winds up with 3/4 of our population living in chronic stress. And folks, that's just not good for your body. It's just not, right? Your body's not meant to handle that hyper arousal on that kind of chronic level. It's designed to happen again in 5-minute spurts, not more than that, right? But because the stress becomes part of our thought process, it becomes part of our, it happens over and over and over again. And that's where it gets very, very dangerous. That's where you have, chronic high blood pressure, which is, leads to hardened arteries and all kinds of bad outcomes from that. Increased heart rate, which leads to heart arrhythmia, right? Which is also all kinds of bad outcomes comes from that, right? Among other things, just the way that we, maladaptively cope with our stress, right? And so anyway, what I'm saying though is that all of this is helped, and certainly most of it is even relieved by the act of compassion, right? Because when we are concerning ourselves with the well-being of someone else, right, we are then taking ourselves out of our own fear, right? And we're also not thinking about outcomes, right? And that's again, that's intrinsic to the ability to live without stress, is to be present, right? And because being present and being compassionate, just like being accepting, is what makes us happy, right? Like there's so much evidence that shows this, not spiritual opinion or spiritual scripture, but hard-nosed neuroscientific evidence shows that the more present we are, the more happy we are. And the more happy we are, the less afraid we are. And the less afraid we are, the less stressed we are. So compassion is a way to get ourselves out of ourselves, and also get ourselves into the present moment. Because when you're practicing compassion for someone, when you're wishing someone well, you're wishing them well right now. You're not wishing them well next week or next month. I mean, of course, that's included, but you're starting right now. Nobody ever says, okay, I wish you well, but it's not going to start until tomorrow. That's just not how it works. So by practicing compassion, and by taking ourselves and giving ourselves the opportunity to wish someone well, to just wish that they be free from suffering, that they be free from fear, insecurities, and feel good and be happy, right? Just wishing that for people takes us back into the present moment, and takes us out of this swarm of thoughts that we might be having that are based around fear and uncertainty and all kinds of things that cause us the stress response, right? And again, it can't be overstated how important it is that the compassion is also the natural mode, the way that we're supposed to be. It's how we're wired. Okay, we're supposed to be compassionate, and by then practicing compassion, we're bringing ourselves into our natural inner, nature. Like we're bringing ourselves into the way that we're supposed to be. And of course, once we do that, we enter a place called homeostasis, which is the opposite of stress, right? It's when our bodies are functioning the way they're supposed to, which again is the opposite of the hyperarousal that can cause all those other problems, right? And in fact, compassion can start to relieve some of those problems and can start to heal some of those things, right? And there's plenty of evidence also that shows that people who practice compassion, when they're sick and when they're injured, they heal better. Okay, burn victims, they heal better when they practice a little bit of compassion. All kinds of different evidence. Again, it's all over there, right? And but again, I keep using a really important word here, not only the word compassion, but the word practice, right? And that's what we try to do, is we practice compassion over and over and over again. And as we practice being present and just paying attention without judgment to what we are doing, the more we practice these two things, the more naturally and habitually and automatically compassion arises. And it becomes something that's in our nature then. Because the problem is that we're not necessarily, just because it is our, that's the way we're brought into the world. And oh boy, this wind. Just because that is the way that we're brought into the world doesn't mean that that's sort of the normal way that people act, right? Like we all develop tendencies of moving away from compassion and moving away from presence and moving away from all these things. That's why it takes practice to get back to those things, right? And if you would like some information on some of these practices, I'd be more than happy to share them with you. I really would. Okay, there's formal meditations. There's also informal ways that you can practice presence and compassion. And the more we practice these, give it a few minutes every day for about a month or so, and then all of a sudden it starts becoming the way that you automatically act, right? In the way that you automatically react to whatever situation. And when you can react to situations with compassion, what you're doing is you're letting compassion, you're letting the compassion in your heart, the powerful compassion that's in your heart, you're letting that lead you. And as you let that lead you through life, it will always lead you to places of health and happiness and just, good feelings and positive, interactions with people. It's amazing, folks. It really is. And again, this is science, not spirituality. Not only spirituality. It's not only science. It's both. And it's really important that I just like to point that out to people because sometimes when we talk in these terms, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, woo woo, but it's not just woo woo. I believe me, it's not just woo woo. And I'd be more than happy to share some of this information with you as well if you're skeptical. So let me know if there's anything I can tell you about this, and let me know also if you would like some of these practices. And I apologize for the wind. I hope you got all that. It's just too nice outside today here in Colorado not to record this outside. I know back east you're all planning for a little snow, I think, later today, and that's kind of rough and on top of everything else. But please know that it's impermanent, right? And it's not going to last forever. And you're going to have beautiful spring weather very, very soon. And also know that I wish you well, that I am holding you in my compassion, and knowing that it's a little bit of a bummer, but know that you're not alone with that, okay? And hopefully that understanding that you're not alone is going to make you feel just a little bit better. All right, everybody, wishing you well. Thanks a lot for listening. If you have any questions, drop a comment, send me a direct message. Really, I would love to help you with any of this stuff that you need help with. Take care. Talk to you soon.